Welcome to the stream. Can you start with just giving a little bit of a breakdown on who you are, what you do, what's happening this week?
Okay. My name's Rylan Hamilton. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Blue Water Autonomy.
Mm-hmm.
We design and build autonomous ships, ones that can operate across the open ocean.
Mm-hmm.
So think thousands of nautical miles of range and being out there for months at a time, like no people.
Mm-hmm.
And we just came out of stealth today.
So like
Amazing.
super yachts for billionaires who want to just like hang out without any crew for months. Is that what we're talking about? Or
Eventually,
is there like
our
some
first customer's
defense
the Navy.
angle here?
I like that. That sounds a little bit easier than what I'm doing now. No, but due to regulation stuff, it's the Navy. They have an
Yeah.
urgent need. We have a shipbuilding issue within the United States.
Yeah.
And what's super cool about what we're doing is because there are no people on board.
Mm-hmm.
So when you remove the bridge, the galley, the
Mhm.
berthing, the showers, and all that stuff, you can make the ship a lot smaller. So our big Navy shipyards today are at capacity, and we're trying to build destroyers and carriers and
Mhm.
submarines as quickly as possible. But our size allows us to build it in all these mid-tier shipyards all over the country, and so we could build them today.
So how small are we talking? Like 25 feet, 10 feet?
So
50
think like
feet?
150 feet. So like
Okay,
if you get
pretty big.
too small, you can't go across like the ocean. You don't have
Sure.
enough fuel. You're going to get whacked in different kind of sea states.
Yep.
But if you're too big, you're too expensive. So there's kind of this sweet spot in the middle.
So what does it take to cross the ocean? Is this like you just diesel fuel and you're good, or is there some
Yeah,
other alternative?
yeah,
plans?
that's not a bad guess. We're not revealing everything, but yeah, we're
Okay.
pretty practical. Like we're taking commercial off the shelf
Got it.
marine kind of components,
Sure.
but we're redesigning the ship from the keel up because
Got
our learnings have said that if you just take like a commercial design
Mhm.
that's meant for people and put sensors on it, that's okay for a week or two, but like eventually it's going to break down. Like you have one engine room and something leaks. And if you've no one on board or no, like you can't, you're going to be dead in the water in the middle of the ocean. That's the last thing that our Navy wants.
Yeah, that makes
Yeah,
sense.
it's interesting. When we first talked, Rylan, I think we were talking about this. There's this YouTuber, and I'm blanking on his name now, but he just like nerds out about all the autonomous vehicles being used in Ukraine,
I like that.
and it's crazy stuff. Like there's people just applying, putting like a sensor on a jet ski, and it's just like out, going
Yeah.
around.
That's cool.
It's really wild. I'm curious. So I talked a little bit about your backstory earlier on the show. You started your career in the Navy, then you went into robotics. You're at Amazon, sold a company to Shopify.
Right.
How much of both of those chapters of your career shaped what you're doing now? It's kind of like you're the perfect guy to build this business, but you had to spend, however long in the Navy and then, do the robotics thing and then actually, do it at scale. But I'm curious, how the kind of learnings you took from each of those chapters.
Yeah, I think this is kind of my dream job, except we're a startup and we're hustling every day, working 7 days a week. So it's not easy.
Yeah.
But yeah, the last 20 years, like my first 4 years, as you said, surface warfare officer in the Navy. I was an engineering officer. I was actually an electrical officer. So on our ship, we had fires, floods, like you name it. We got hit by lightning. The ship would lose power. But I learned a lot. So over the, in 4 years after I went to graduate school, and then I actually got lucky and I joined this company called Kiva Systems that got bought while I was there by Amazon, became Amazon Robotics.
Yeah.
I was employee 200, became the youngest person on the leadership team. But I was there when like a couple thousand robots were in the field. We scaled it with Amazon to 15,000. And now, like my guess is there are over 1 million robots in Amazon warehouses based off that company and that technology.
Wow.
And so I left and then I started my own robotics company, again, collaborative autonomous mobile robots. So ones that didn't need fencing or stickers or anything like that. And I kind of feel like right now we're building kind of one of the world's largest mobile robots. It's just a ship that has to cruise across kind of the oceans. And so we're taking all these lessons where you take the hardware primitives and you smartly design it into something that's reliable and works all the time. And then you got to write the software on top. And so like that's the talent that we have on our team right now.
How much or how little has the average Navy vessel advanced since you were on them back in the day? I imagine it's not as much advancement as one would like.
So let me just be clear. We build the best warships in the world. They are amazing. You look at a guided missile destroyer, it's been through a lot of iterations. It's fucking awesome. However, it takes a lot to make a design change on a warship because there's so many different components. You have to make sure the supply chain's there. So a couple of weeks ago, I was actually walking through a big Navy shipyard and I was looking and like you look at the gauge and there's like the concept of IoT is just not there. but they work, and it's been like hard tested. And so we have this opportunity when we redesign everything to kind of put and make everything smart and have, sensors over everything. And so right now, just on our core design, it'll get better over time. We have 550 kind of data feeds into our edge compute just to know what's going on in the ship. So it's like we need to know everything, but that's just not where you're going to get on a modern Navy ship.
That makes sense. Can you talk about the Jones Act? Was it good or bad? Maybe you don't have to give that aggressive of a take, but in this era where deregulation is popular, I'm curious if you think that should be sort of dug into further. Obviously, we're just not building nearly as many ships as some of our adversaries, and you guys are hopefully changing that. But curious your thoughts.
So I'm not an expert on the Jones Act, but I'm definitely aware of it. But I think what's critical is we need to be able to build ships in the United States. Like sea power has been the bedrock for our prosperity and security for the last 100 years. And that needs to be, we need to have sea power for the next 100 years. So we can't outsource shipbuilding. We need to have that as a core ability within the United States, and we need to get a lot better and increase our capacity. I think because of the Jones Act, we still build ships here in the United States, and that's important. Maybe there could be some tweaks to it, but we can't outsource shipping to other countries. It's like too critical for our nation.
Palmer Luckey was on the Sean Ryan podcast talking about how China has vastly more shipbuilding capacity. And a big part of that is that civilian ships in China must be built to military specifications. They need to have roll-on, roll-off capabilities for troop carriers. You could argue that maybe American civilian ships should be built to military specs, but that kind of spits in the face of the free market. What if I don't want, tank treads on my pleasure yacht? But where do you stand on that as kind of just from an American standpoint?
So I haven't walked through a Chinese shipyard, and I don't think I ever will.
I don't think you're welcome.
No, I don't think you'll be there.
But I know that we build ships a lot better in terms of our warships than any other country. And they're built. And if you look, there have been incidents where we've been hit by mines or ship missiles or anti-ship missiles, and they withstand and they don't sink. And so like a lot of credit to our Navy in terms of how we design things. But if we just try to compete with China head on head in terms of like who can build more destroyers, they're going to win. So we need to out innovate them. And I think there's not a silver bullet, but if you look at the things that Anduril is doing underwater, it's awesome, right? And if you look at our nuclear submarines, we're a generation ahead on submarines versus Chinese. And now what we're trying to do is saying on the surface, let's complement our manned fleet with an unmanned fleet so we can kind of be a force multiplier. So we don't have to put a DDG in every area, that we can kind of be the front line of the picket fence for some of these destroyers and put it in harm's way before you put, the destroyer out there. And so it's not like, I think the point is like, let's innovate and try lean into sort of autonomous systems, but let's not pretend like we're just going to change our shipbuilding capacity overnight and compete with the Chinese.
How do you think hypersonics change the nature of naval warfare?
It definitely changes it, because if you think about our exquisite platforms, whether it's aircraft carriers or destroyers, like we're not going to put them kind of as close as we would to an area of conflict because of these anti-ship missiles and hypersonics with extended range. Now, one thing you have to appreciate about our military, it's a system of systems. So there's a lot of, and I'm not an expert, there's a lot of cool stuff that's happening in space and others. So it's really hard to hit an aircraft carrier that's going 30 plus knots, that's a couple thousand nautical miles away. And we have some countermeasures to it. So, but it definitely means that we're going to sort of keep these ships farther and farther away from areas where there could be either hypersonics or anti-ship missiles.
That makes sense. What do you think about, you mentioned early on about there seemingly is our existing domestic capacity to make the size ships that Blue Water Autonomy is making. Do you think that the actual manufacturing layer still needs to scale significantly, or is the capacity there and it's just, needs to be allocated more efficiently or needs to get more efficient?
Yeah, so the capacity is there to build them, but we can do a lot better to just like take the status quo. And so these shipyards, they build ferries, they build tugs, they build barges, they build crew transfer vessels, but their business is kind of lumpy. And so it doesn't make sense for them to invest in a lot of automation. But when the Navy can give a strong demand signal and say, we're going to build a lot of these, that's when you can really double down in terms of building like these shipyards of the future and put a lot of investment into it. The other thing is, since we've been designing this kind of ship from the keel up, everything's like, in CAD, It's all there. It's all digital. It's all already tied to a product lifecycle management system. And so we get the benefits of starting like today with modern tools to build this, which allows us to kind of like outsource this to a lot of different, like some of the parts of the ship could actually be built in like a central facility in the United States. You don't need to put everything in the shipyard. But when you build a ship today, so let's say it's like a steel hull ship, you build the hull, you may be building components, you stitch it together, and then you send all of the electronics and everything, and then you commission it on the ship. Well, that's the hardest place, is actually turn on a system in the middle of a hole in a shipyard, and it just takes a long time. And so I think there's a much better way that we can kind of build these ships at scale.
How do you think about what Anduril's doing on the lattice side? I could imagine if you're producing a ton of autonomous ships, you'd want those to be somehow teaming with Dive XL submarines and drones overhead and all sorts of stuff. And I'm sure the modern warfighter would want to have all of that on a map essentially, or be able to integrate all of that. How are you thinking about integration with other systems that might be competitive in the financial markets, but close allies in the geopolitical sense?
Well, I haven't talked to Anduril yet, but we just came out of stealth, and maybe because this podcast, they'll reach out to me, someone from the Lattice team.
Okay.
No, but I think it's really important that we talk to systems like Lattice, because we're not going to be the control system for all these like UXVs that are out there. That's not our bread and butter. Our bread and butter is building autonomous ships that are reliable and that just work. And so we want to make sure that we have the integration layer to kind of connect all these different systems. At my last company, we built an automation solution where we were in over 120 warehouses all throughout the world. And we talked to like many different types of warehouse management systems. So we needed to build in that integration layer and not just be beholden to one WMS. And we have some of those same people on the team, and that's what we'll need to build. Like we need to be agnostic to kind of the layers that we speak to above us.
Random question, not related to the current business, but I'm really interested to get your take on it. We've talked a lot about the various companies doing humanoid robotics. One of the pitches for humanoid robots is that, hey, we have all these, fulfillment centers throughout the world. Humans are working them. Humans are great at a lot of stuff, but they're also, sometimes they wake up and they're sick, or they don't have, enough energy or whatever. You were working in robotics in fulfillment for a very long time at the incredible scale. Do you think that humanoid robotics are overhyped in the context of fulfillment, or really have potential there that maybe people aren't seeing?
So humanoid robots are very divisive in my kind of like robot mafia. I kind of think of it like when I started my last robotics company was 2015. And everyone's saying in 5 years, we're going to have autonomous vehicles. And it ended up being 10 years. And I kind of feel like we're at that moment where it's super exciting to see all the progress we're making. I just don't think it's been 5 years. I think it's closer to 10 years. And I don't think humanoid robots are going to do everything, but I think they're super exciting. One thing actually, like a little tidbit that I learned recently is that everyone's like, why don't you just put it on a big mobile base? It's a lot easier. Well, if you think about like a warehouse and some of the activities that you do, when you have two little legs, you can actually get into like areas that are a lot tighter. But if you have a really small mobile base, they're going to tip over if they're trying to carry something heavy. So I think there's a lot of experimentation that's going to happen. Also, like things about humanoids is when they fall, humans, we brace ourselves with our hands. Well, then those hands need to be robust. If you put a lot of sensors on the hand and they fall all the time, well, then it's not going to work and you have to repair them. So I think there are a lot of things that they're going to have to iterate on over time, but there's a ton of investment that's happening in that space, and it's super exciting for robotics overall.
Last question.
In the context of humanoids, is there ever a point in the future where you could imagine a humanoid on one of your ships, or is there just going to be better form?
It's going to steer the ship directly. That's the future. It's going to be a sailboat operated by humanoids.
Not that silly, but I'm curious if you could imagine a future,
cut the jib,
or they'll just be better form factors.
I don't see it right away. I don't think it makes sense to have a humanoid actually turn the wheel when you have a motor turn the wheel. Just saying.
That's what I want. I want to be drinking Dom Perignon on the back, having the sails go up and down by the humanoids. Pull the ropes.
Here's the thing. I actually think as we think about building our ship, we're like the taxi for a bunch of other UXVs. So it's not humanoids you're going to put on these.
That's
but
what I thought.
Think about what Anduril just launched. They just launched these really cool UUVs or whatever they're calling it. Or if you think about drones or other autonomous aircraft, like we could become the modern aircraft carrier to carry these kind of drones or these smaller things that don't have the range, but we can carry them out in the same way that SpaceX is carrying all these cool satellites up into space. Like we want to be that vehicle that makes the cost of getting these things out there cheaper. And so we can carry a portfolio of these kind of drones on our ship.
That's
Very
fantastic.
cool.
I mean,
Very cool.
Congratulations on the launch. We look forward to following the company, and thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
This
Great
is fantastic. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.